Okay, good morning and welcome to the Leadership and Economic webinar series. My name is Rick Thomas from Pilot Wealth Management, your webinar moderator. And today's topic is growing your business in a skills-challenged market, 4 strategies for success. And anchoring our conversation this morning is Susie Oliga, Director of Training for Xenium. Good morning, Susie.
Good morning.
Alrighty, so before we dive in, I just want to mention a couple things. First, I want to acknowledge our summit sponsors, Xenium, Pilot Wealth Management, Pacific Continental Bank, and Geffen Mesher. And also mention that we are already looking ahead to our next live summit event coming up this fall. Returning to keynote the event will be John Mitchell. And we're also working on a compelling CEO panel for this next year's event. So stay tuned for coming announcements, as you'll definitely not want to miss that. So, okay, enough of the announcements. Susie, kick us off on today's discussion. Where do we want to start?
Okay, first, before we dive into the content of the webinar, I'd like to just cover a few housekeeping items regarding today's webinar. There will be a Q&A portion after the webinar, so basically we'll provide a 20-minute discussion and present some content, and then there'll be an opportunity for folks to enter questions that they might have in the chat feature in the right-hand side of your screen. So please feel free to answer or input questions as we go along, and then we will address those later at the end of the presentation. We will also be recording today's webinar, and we will have that recording and the PowerPoint available after the session, and we will be emailing that out to those who have registered. And here's some information of how you might connect with Xenium. If you have questions or interest in any of our programs after the webinar, you can certainly reach out to us or subscribe to our updates and newsletters. So let's dive into the material today and our topic. So there is some debate and some differing opinions on whether a skills shortage actually exists. And regardless of viewpoints, surveys of executives and HR professionals continue to cite talent acquisition as a key strategic priority over the next 5 to 10 years. So as the economy is steadily improving and businesses are planning or poising themselves for growth, expectations for talent have also increased. Small businesses and manufacturing employers we've seen are particularly facing challenges finding people who can produce new ideas and are essential to growing the business and competing with larger companies. The hardest jobs to fill are those that have the biggest impact on performance, interestingly. So skill sets in highest demand are in the areas of leadership, technical skills, skill production, and those are the talents and abilities that are needed to expand operations and drive innovation and improve productivity. So for this reason, many businesses are focusing on management and operational backgrounds versus specific industry experience, and then providing their own training and development based on the specific work that needs to be done. So it's kind of this two-pronged approach, looking externally but also investing in some development internally. So according to a new study from Accenture and the Manufacturing Institute, U.S. manufacturers may be losing up to 11% of their earnings annually as a result of an increase in production, but also a shortage of skills and folks to fill those needed roles. So all areas of manufacturing have kind of suffered over the past years, and the challenges vary from advancements in technology, lack of education and applicable skills, an aging workforce, and lack of interest in manufacturing jobs. And according to a Manufacturing Institute and Deloitte survey, 80% of respondents indicated that machinists, operators, craft workers, distributors, and technician positions will be the hardest hit by retirement, those baby boomers, in the upcoming years. And at the same time, companies expect the skill production group to be the hardest to find in the job market.
Susie, let me interject, because I've heard you mention manufacturing several times.
Yeah.
So based on what you're seeing among your client base around this region, is that who is feeling this pinch the most, or is that kind of emblematic of all market sectors?
Yeah, I think manufacturing is challenged right now. It's not the only sector,
Right.
but as far as manufacturing goes, the technology has increased for modern manufacturing, and there's a shortage in technical skill sets in that regard, and that's coupled with obviously the folks that are getting ready to retire, and then also you have the younger folks who don't really have necessarily an accurate view of the opportunities associated with manufacturing companies, and historically manufacturers, I'm talking smaller versus the huge ones like GE and so on,
Right.
haven't really done a great job at marketing their employment value proposition, and the fact that it's not a place where people are getting dirty and working in factories, and that there's actually a lot of technology and innovation and meaningful work that's produced.
Sure.
And so it's kind of that there needs to be some work done in the marketing and branding, which we'll discuss later, and also educating the up-and-coming generation about the opportunities associated with manufacturing.
Right. I can say specific to the client base that we are, come in contact with, heavy industry is the one where we see the largest gap because of this retiring base of workers that does not have the younger generation coming up behind them, backfilling. Yeah, absolutely. So what do we do about this? I mean, what do business owners do knowing they've got this gap?
We'll talk about some strategies. I will say too, this is an issue for other industries in addition to manufacturing. And there was even a Wall Street Journal article last month regarding the skill shortages, specifically in small business. And it said about 33% of the 848 small business owners and chief executives surveyed said that they had unfilled openings in June because they just couldn't find qualified applicants. So why is this happening? Well, obviously we can look at the tightening labor market. That could be part of it. Another perception may be small businesses don't have as much opportunity, or they're riskier, less stable. And another reason, I think, which is common for small businesses and even some of the manufacturers, is that they're relying on the outdated traditional methods of attracting folks. So they're not online. They're not networking and being proactive in their sourcing. They're basically relying on word of mouth, or they're throwing a job posting out there and just hoping, like so casting your net.
Yeah, putting some up on Craigslist
right.
and expecting to get the right candidates. Just, open cattle call, so to speak. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yep.
Alrighty. So let's talk about strategies.
Great. So I've kind of narrowed it down to 4 strategies here, and in my experience and what I've seen, it really needs to be a multi-pronged approach. I mean, you want to be very focused and targeted based on your needs.
Right.
But it's, if you're concentrating only on looking outside of your organization to bring folks in and ignoring your internal skill gaps, then it's going to be difficult to retain the good folks that you have. So you have to basically apply and identify strategies that are not only attracting people to your organization, but also building your internal capabilities at the same time. So the strategies that we'll be discussing today are, 1, developing your culture, and we'll talk about how that helps you attract and retain people a little bit.
Okay.
Getting analytical. That gets into establishing some benchmarks and looking at some metrics around your talent management practices, and conducting some analysis to really be strategic versus just using your gut or assumptions about what might be happening out there in the market and in your company. Social, that's huge. The whole social networking aspect of recruiting and talent management is definitely a trend and growing. And then internal capabilities. So that's more about looking at your internal talent and identifying opportunities and methods to continue to grow and and expand the skill sets and move people who are capable into those key roles.
Okay, super. So let's talk about culture. And this in particular, I know Xenium has been doing some specific work around this.
Yes.
With organizations. So what does it mean to build it?
Yeah. So I like my Field of Dreams reference. If you build it, they will come. And I personally believe this because people are attracted to great workplaces, right? There's research on this. There's a science behind it. And really having a great workplace is no longer viewed as a nice to have, but it's really becoming a business imperative and a key differentiator from the competition. And having a great culture can make a difference between your success and your failure because it impacts just about every business metric from customer service to productivity to profitability. So, if you have a great culture, people are trying to get in the door and people are less likely to leave. So, and interestingly enough, you'll see it come up if you're reading a lot of the business and HR blogs and articles. A strong company culture is cited as a key strategic priority for the companies on this year's Fortune 100 best companies to work for. So these companies have already arrived, so to speak, but they're still developing and focused on their culture because they see that as a key aspect of getting the skills and talent and keeping that top talent. And we know, high-profile employers with strong workplace cultures like Intel and Google and Zappos, they definitely leverage their culture to attract and retain desired talent. So the way that business can go about developing their culture is first really defining it, so identifying what makes your organization unique.
Okay.
And that it usually starts with identifying the purpose, so why you do what you do. We can all articulate what we do, but what's really the purpose or the meaning behind that, and that shared purpose that everybody can kind of rally around and get excited about. So being able to identify and articulate that in a meaningful way, and then also defining core values that are unique to the organization. So more around how you do what you do and what's important and really what's a deal breaker, in terms of how you do business. And so, putting that stuff together, gaining buy-in from all the shareholders in the organization is critical, and being clear about the expectations and behaviors that are associated with those values so that you can then integrate those into your recruiting, onboarding, performance management processes so that you can make it stick. And that's probably the most important piece of the whole culture development process.
So just to review, you said purpose, define a purpose, get clear about the values, define the behaviors, and that's what makes it stick.
Well, and then the sticking is integrating, right? Integrating those expectations associated with your values into all of your HR practices.
Okay, so the hiring, performance management.
Yes. So you're hiring, which we'll talk about in a minute, your branding, but first of all, you're hiring people who share those same values and believe in the purpose and values. You're making sure that they're kept alive and fresh through your recognition and rewards programs. You are holding people accountable, and ideally the individuals in the organization believe so strongly that they're holding each other accountable through, constructive conversations, and then supervisors are using coaching and corrective action if necessary. And then, really in your performance review process, those behaviors, just like the behaviors that you would define as being critical to the performance of their job, those value behaviors should be incorporated as well.
Right. So, I mean, let's be honest, these things are not done overnight.
No.
I mean, this is, fairly extensive cultural development work. I mean, what's a reasonable expectation? If I'm a business owner and what you're telling me is, geez, before I can expect to really attract good talent, I need to do this deep culture work. Is that a 6-month time frame? Is that a year, 18 months? I mean, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on the size of the organization, the openness and readiness, and then the support from the founders and executive leadership, and then them, getting all of their management team on board.
Right.
So, I mean, I would say even the smallest company that's fully committed, it's a good year or more, because that integration piece is ongoing. And, HR can help support a project plan or an initiative to start, based on what's going on with the company. Maybe we attack the recruiting and hiring process first because we're growing.
Right.
So let's make sure that we have interview questions and job postings and networking and advertising that's really clear about our values and what presents a fit. Or maybe, we're a company that's not doing a lot of hiring, so maybe we attack the performance management piece or the peer recognition rewards.
Sure.
So it depends, but I would say it's a good year to kind of get some momentum, and then it needs to be maintained. And another thing that you can do to kind of ensure that it keeps moving forward is not to rely solely on management and leadership to drive that initiative, but have a committee or task force or fun mix of people in the company that their sole purpose is to continue to reinforce the culture, and they're involved in coming up with ideas for recognition or team building or so forth that furthers the culture.
Okay, great. So you mentioned branding. Say more about that.
Yeah, so the next piece that I want to talk about is going to market for talent is not much different than going to market with your products and services. So an employment brand is an internal sum of images or impressions your company makes on an individual. So everything that you say or do, obviously, especially your website, for example, it sends a message. So hopefully your brand is creating a clear and compelling image that makes people want to join your company or continue working for you. So here's a great opportunity to leverage your marketing team or resources to help create messaging around your employment value proposition as it relates to the people that you're looking for, right? So there's this whole science behind motivation, which many people have probably heard of, Daniel Pink's book, Drive, and his TED Talks. He talks about that, if the perception of compensation is fair, intrinsic factors such as meaningful work, autonomy, and mastery are the most influential and motivating people. So many organizations are therefore building their brand not just around their core values, but also around these motivating factors to attract the best and brightest. And so, they're focused on offering or communicating that there's rich and challenging work. There's opportunities to have the freedom to be innovative and creative and put your personal stamp on your work, solve problems, all that stuff. And folks out there, especially younger folks, are heavily influenced by the media. So this is why developing your external image is important,
right?
Especially as we talked about before in industries such as manufacturing, which traditionally has tended to have a non-progressive stereotype for many young people.
So you do have some examples of these.
Yeah.
Can you kind of show us what they look like here?
So there's Innovationist People. These are examples from career websites of some widely known companies. So for example, Innovation is People. Obviously that's sending the message about the opportunity to be creative and innovative. That's from 3M. Amaze yourself, amaze the world. Some of you have seen these before, but that is Apple. And so it is really trying to hit on the mastery where, you will have the ability to grow and be challenged and do cool things.
Right.
So do cool things that matter. That happens to be Google, and that's playing on that meaningful work motivator. Create the impossible, be extraordinary, see your idea become the next breakthrough. That's Qualcomm. They've historically been on Fortune's 100 Best Companies to Work For list. And you can see that's kind of trying to trigger the motivators of innovation, meaning, and autonomy. creating the future of play. We believe in you and the potential of us. Innovation again, autonomy could be construed there. And then we set the bar high and then we raise it higher. That's clearly saying that there's challenging and fulfilling work and opportunities here, and that's Nike.
But again, to underscore here, there's definitely a place for promoting and putting a brand on that culture that you've developed. But it's got to be authentic, right?
Absolutely.
You can't bring people in and have them realize, this is not what was advertised. Otherwise, they're just going to walk back out the door.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the same. It's applying the same concepts and strategies that you do to acquiring business and customers to your human capital.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same idea. So, yeah, if you don't deliver on what you're promising, then it's going to have a more detrimental effect. You're going to get that reputation in the market, and it's going to hurt you.
So let's talk about, you talked about getting analytical. So what does that mean? How do you get analytical when it comes to talent acquisition?
Yeah, so there's all this talk about big data. It's becoming mainstream strategy in many business functions, but HR is playing catch up. So many organizations, especially the larger ones, are increasing their investments in talent analytics, and of course there's lots of software and expensive items out there to help you with this, but there are also some basic things that you can do to really help you analyze and evaluate the effectiveness of your hiring and talent management practices. So it may involve compiling workforce data and analyzing it based on specific business challenges. So, if there's a hard-to-fill role that's critical for your business, really trying to look at the data behind it and analyze it to determine, okay, why aren't we able to fill this position? Is it because we're not looking for the right people, we're looking in the wrong places, or we get them in and then we don't give them the right opportunities, so they leave shortly thereafter.
Okay.
So some examples of data collection analysis can include, analyzing the skills and experience of your highest performing and tenured employees to help you really identify what specifically contributes to high performance or retention. You could use a spreadsheet or a reasonably priced applicant tracking system to track your time to hire and the sources of your most qualified candidates, so you can make sure you're targeting your recruitment activities appropriately. Measuring retention is kind of, I think, a no-brainer. Everybody should be doing that and at least analyzing that on a quarterly or semi-annually basis. So looking at average length of time in a position, reasons for leaving, and analyzing those trends around undesirable turnover. So, especially for those hard-to-fill roles, what's getting in the way from people staying in their position.
Okay.
Conducting employee surveys or stay interviews to better predict possible turnover, so you can address it before someone leaves.
Say more about that stay interview, because that's something I heard recently. I think you guys had mentioned that a while back. Say more about that.
Yeah, so stay interviews, you know the term exit interviews, right? Well, when you learn then why someone's leaving, it's a little too late, right? So stay interviews is a more proactive approach, and it's a little bit deeper dive than the traditional employee satisfaction survey, where you actually interview, and it's nice to have a third party, neutral third party, like a Xenium or a consultant do this, but it's really sitting down with employees and finding out, what keeps them at the company, right? What keeps them there, what excites them, what frustrates them, what keeps them up at night, what would make them look for another job, have they thought about looking for other work, are they feeling fully utilized, challenged, right? We're going back to those motivating factors, right? So really trying to tap into that to make sure that, especially your top talent, you're taking steps to provide the motivators and the work that they desire to keep them. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of that actually lately, and I've actually incorporated some stay interviews along with the culture work that we've done as kind of an initial assessment. And then the last thing, measure results of performance and training to better correlate your development programs with key business and operational metrics. And there are different tools. I mean, certainly you can create an internal database of employee skills in the organization to have a better understanding of their capabilities and the potential for future jobs. LinkedIn, they've put a lot of time and money into R&D for their analytics. So if you subscribe to the LinkedIn Recruiter service, you can access every LinkedIn profile. You can search any number of criteria using the LinkedIn filters. So you can track and analyze the skills, knowledge, and experience and career paths of employees, former employees, and potential employees, as well as gain an understanding of where your hires are coming from and where departing employees go. So there are a lot of things that you can do in terms of the data to help you have a clearer understanding of where your gaps are, the average tenure of your critical positions, and the factors that contribute to performance and retention.
Okay. So let's dive into this next strategy, which I'll admit for some of my older generation clients, this is something that they look as just a nuisance, which is the whole notion of social networking, social media, and yet what you're saying is this is a critical part in recruiting talent. So,
yeah.
Talk about how this how do you start unpacking this in a way that begins to make sense for even the older people, the older generation that are a little wary of this technology, of the influence of this in our culture.
Yeah, I mean, the information can, we all know how fast information travels online. So it's a very quick and easy way to communicate to a mass number of people. The new recruiting involves building relationships and networks, really, to find the right candidates through not only quality research, which we talked about looking at some data,
right,
but also engagement and community.
Yeah. So that that looks like, what does that look like in practice?
Yeah. So employees ideally are your brand ambassadors, right? This is why culture, of course, is so important. And social media sites can be advertising platforms for your company. It's as basic as that.
Okay.
So getting employees involved in networking, I mean, most of them are on Facebook, and a lot of it may be on LinkedIn anyways, so how can you maximize that? How can you provide employee referral incentives to do job post sharing? How can, if your culture is strong and people are really engaged, how can you have, your employees or encourage them or make them feel free to discuss via Facebook or LinkedIn, what a great place to work your company is. For example, Brandon mentioned the other day, we've had people post internally about, things that have happened at work internally and how thankful or grateful they are to work here. Or Brandon said, I came to my desk and it was all decorated for my birthday, and,
right.
I took a picture and posted it, and so that's creating some visibility for, what kind of company and what kind of culture you have. But I definitely think there's opportunities to get employees involved in training them how to update their LinkedIn profiles,
Sure,
to communicate your brand, but also providing those incentives to get them networking and sharing, because employee referrals are fairly successful, especially where you do have a strong culture.
So let's talk about the last strategy, Susie, that you mentioned, which is cultivating internal capabilities. So I imagine this is really squarely within the wheelhouse for Xenium.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
Yeah. So there are various ways to attack this, but I mean, it's definitely an area that is growing. I was just reading in the August edition of HR Magazine that, especially in small companies, leadership development is on the rise. So there is this investment happening, and I know PricewaterhouseCoopers does their CEO survey, and 78% of the CEOs plan to make changes to their talent development, including leadership development. So, this is the internal approach to really being clear about your skill gaps. So, analyzing your supply against the demand, right? So what's the gap analysis? You have your business plan, you know what you need to deliver on that. Where are the talent or the skill gaps as it relates to your current supply of talent? And then, what are the skills that need to be developed? And then as you do your performance management and review process, taking that a step further and doing some assessment in terms of who is ready and able to move, into those other critical roles, and who can we create a career path for to move into maybe a leadership role, for example. So really important, and this is something that HR really should be involved in, is building a framework for career development, especially for those critical skill roles. So charting out a clear career path, including competencies and development recommendations, and then working with the managers to create personal development plans with goals focused on developing those high demand competencies. Another thing is just designing processes and incentives that encourage people to move to areas of the company where the skills are in demand. So it doesn't necessarily mean moving up, but it may be, offering opportunities to participate in cross-functional teams, to solve business problems, or giving them exposure to some leadership assignments so they can gain further business perspective and learn about different areas of the business.
Great. So in terms of, this isn't just about dealing with today's shortage, but thinking about tomorrow and how we deal with the needs for tomorrow. So talk to us about how you carry this out in terms of a strategy for future needs.
Yeah, so I would say, obviously, even if you don't have a number of positions open or vacancies, you should still be proactive and strategic and start building your bench, so to speak, now.
Right.
We talked about the notion of a skills shortage, and that may be debatable, but what is not is that talent wins. So, if you put the same effort in obtaining customers as acquiring talent, you're going to be much better equipped to compete and grow. And we have a client who said the other day, I want 2 lines outside of my office, one of customers and the other people who want to work for us. And so the ways to go about this would be to identify your largest talent gaps and develop strategies to attract and develop that talent. As we discussed before, using business intelligence and data versus gut instinct and assumptions to find out where and how to access the skills you need. Leverage your operational and marketing resources to establish metrics and develop your brand. Use various modes, including social media, to communicate your employment value proposition and to engage people out there in the market. And then invest in developing those leaders who are capable of building and leading high-performance teams. And that really is, from a manager or supervisor role standpoint, a critical competency. It's one that's in sometimes seemingly short supply, but in definitely high demand, is the ability to build and develop teams.
Right.
So that's, if you focus on developing that alone, you should see results.
Right.
Because successful leaders hire top talent, and then there's this ripple effect where top talent attracts other top talent.
Right. Okay. So, wow, a lot of information, and we're trying to squeeze this into a very tight window here, but thank you for indulging us a few extra minutes to get through all the content. Obviously, a lot more to say, but we want to hear from those of you that are listening and answer any questions that you have. And we had one right off the bat that we'll address, and that is, Susie, our company has talked about starting an intern program, but we don't know where to start. What would you recommend?
Yeah, well, I would say it depends on the type of work or industry that you're in. I would, if you haven't done it already, you may consider getting involved with or building some relationships with some schools, whether it be high schools, colleges, trade schools, whatever that are relevant to the work that you do. But the key with internships is that they're not designed to just have someone come in and do some extra work for you that needs to be done. Right. They really should be designed to solve a problem or to improve some specific area in your business.
So there's got to be a business objective aside
Yes.
from just offering an opportunity to earn a student earn a few dollars during the summer.
Right,
Okay.
right. And then there are obviously some legal compliance considerations associated with that too, that there's some specific criteria that warrants whether or not a position qualifies as an internship versus an employee.
Sure.
But I think the most important thing is providing a very organized, structured, meaningful opportunity for someone who possesses a particular skill set to come into the organization and, in a 3-month period, for example, produce something
Right.
that you can use in your business. Like our client Polycast, who
Right.
partnered with Sherwood High School and had a very talented young man come in and actually automate a piece of their production process, which they reportedly saved, thousands of dollars by having him come in and doing that one
Right.
summer.
I think that's just phenomenal, having somebody at the high school level come in and make an immediate impact on a business. But to your point, so the steps would be, first, define what the business case is for the internship or for the intern. Second, define the resources, whether it be a high school, vocational program, college within your area that serves that particular business case. And then 3, make sure you've got the structure in the program so they're not just spending the summer getting coffee for people, but they're actually doing something really productive that fulfills the need of the business case. Is that fair?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And making sure that there are people internally in the organization who are mentoring and supporting that individual too.
Yeah, I think what's powerful, I participated in several internships when I was in college, which is a while ago, but it was very beneficial for me. And guess what? When I got out of college, I knew exactly where I wanted to work.
Yeah.
Because they'd given me the opportunity before. I already knew the culture, and I was able to fit right in. Okay, second question is, Susie, my company does not have a marketing team to rely on for employment branding. Where do I start?
Yeah, so if you are a smaller organization and you also don't outsource your marketing to anyone in particular, certainly outsourcing is an option to pay for marketing expertise as you need it if you don't have someone dedicated internally. Beyond that, I would challenge you to look at your internal resources. Just like you would, involve various members of the organization in that core values development process. Who, in terms of your internal resources and your employees, who's creative, who has an eye for marketing, who's really one of your ambassadors and excited and clear about who you are and what your culture's like, and getting, a task force, so to speak, together and having them come up with some ideas for how to articulate your brand. And maybe there's someone who's technically savvy or a good writer or whatever, but get creative, so to speak, with your resources if you can't afford to hire someone internally or outsource your marketing.
Sure. One thing I've seen people get kind of wrapped around the axle on is trying to make it perfect before they put it out there. And the mantra that I've always used is get it out there and get in the practice of getting it out there. And as you do that, work on the perfection piece. Otherwise, you'll never put it out there.
Right.
So, anyhow, okay. So we've got another question from a bang for the buck perspective. What's the best social media platform to use for social recruiting?
I would say LinkedIn.
Okay.
And that's because they've invested so much time and resources into their analytics. And I would say, LinkedIn, they will train you. If you sign up for their recruiting, they will come out and train you and support you. And I would even go further as to, once you're clear on your branding and messaging, train all of your employees on, how are we presenting ourselves in the market? How can you build your profile to really represent what you do here and what we do as an organization and how that's meaningful, so that they're engaged and that they can start networking and sharing jobs.
Is that a fee for service that LinkedIn charges for?
The LinkedIn recruiting is.
Okay.
Yeah. But I feel like it's, it's not something that's not in terms of results that you can achieve, I feel like it's a reasonable investment, as opposed to, again, the whole casting the net out there,
right,
or posting on Indeed that even taps into various career sites. It's still more of a reactive
right,
means of recruiting.
Sure. Okay. Next question is Susie, what's a way to stay in front of your bench if there isn't a position available right away for them to kind of, obviously be targeting?
Yeah. Again, I think it's the mindset change. It's the mindset shift that you never stop looking for customers, do you? I mean, are you ever satisfied? I mean, I'm sure there's very few companies out there like, yeah, we don't really want to add any more customers.
Right.
It's the same mental shift that needs to happen. Like you ideally have what I call a hot file. You have a network of people that you're constantly talking to, that maybe the timing's not right for you or for them, but they're interested in your organization. So that when an opportunity opens up,
right,
you've got some options, right? And so it's getting the whole management team to develop that mindset of constantly networking and looking for talent, and keeping those the dialogue open with folks out in the market, their connections with their business associations,
sure,
friends, whatever, so that you have a network or a file of people that you can draw from. So you're not starting at scratch when your best person leaves you to move out of state for their family, or you've gone to the point now where you've grown enough where you need to add someone, and now you're starting from scratch and you're recruiting.
Yeah. Okay. Super. Well, it looks like that's it for the questions for now, unless there's Susie, any last thoughts or comments about what you've presented this morning, and anything you'd like to really underscore?
Yeah, I think I would just like to say there is an opportunity for a lot of businesses, especially smaller businesses, to learn from the tech industry. A lot of especially Portland's got a great startup technology
culture,
and they are doing some really cool, innovative things to attract talent and get the skills that they need. An example is this unconference idea, where they're bringing advertising and marketing this and bringing passionate people together in a particular field who are interested in collaborating and sharing insights and learning best practices. And it's geared towards skilled industry professionals who are looking to network and enhance their skills. But it's really putting your feelers out in the community and building those connections with talent in your space. So I think it's worth looking at some of the strategies that those tech companies are employing and seeing how that might be tweaked or translated to a different industry. Or maybe
very
a small
interesting.
organization.
Very interesting. The thing that strikes me in just hearing about all your kind of key strategies is that there is no silver bullet here.
No.
It takes a comprehensive kind of systemic approach to this, and especially back to the culture piece, it takes some time to develop that. I mean, I'm assuming this is not a serial process, but a parallel process.
Yes.
So you put all of these in motion at the same time, but until your system is fully matured, you may not be attracting all and the highest degree of talent that you need ultimately. But at some point you will get there, but that culture is a pretty key piece of the puzzle.
It is, yeah. And that's why I said if you build it, they will come.
Sure.
Yeah, and stay, because that does provide a foundation.
Okay,
yeah.
Good deal. So let's wrap up here and get to the final slide, which is not cooperating with us. So, oh, here we go. So, as Susie mentioned at the beginning, if you want to follow up with Susie or Xenium, you can reach them at info@xeniumhr.com. Or if you'd like to link to any of the ongoing email updates and whatnot, you've got the social media buttons. Again, look for our summit coming this fall. You'll see more announcements on that. It's actually, it's not December. It's going to be earlier than that, but but we'll give you the final date when we've landed on it. And thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to having you join us at the next webinar series in September. Thank you.